Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Kushner, and today I'm going to show you how to edit your photos in Snapseed. So the first thing that I'll show you is if you go to your camera roll and you click on your picture, you can actually do a lot of editing in the Photos app. So that's an option that you have. If you go to the top right and click Edit, you have a bunch of features. So you could click the magic wand, which will automatically kind of balance your light and your contrast. If you click this plus minus button, that's the exposure. That's how bright or less bright you make your photo. If you click on the next button is the brilliance. And if you notice, you can just kind of use the sliders and kind of eyeball it. Your goal is really to balance out your image. So we'll keep going. Your highlights are like the bright spots. Your shadows are the darker areas, so you can intensify them. Contrast is the difference between the darks and the lights. So the brights get brighter, the darks get darker. As you go down, it gets a little more gray. And then we've got the brightness, how bright it is. We've got the black point. You notice how it gets more intense or less intense as you drag it. You've got your saturation, how intense the color is. If you drag it up, the colors are super intense. If you drag it down, that brings it towards black and white. So if you wanted like a totally black and white image, you could drag it all the way down. If you wanted just very subtle color, you could kind of leave the saturation low. Here's Vibrance. Again, kind of the intensity of the color, how vibrant the colors are. The warmth, it's really warm and red, or cool, kind of more blue, green. You can play with a tint, which is again kind of colorizing it. Sharpness, if you want to make it really sharp. Definition, similar, you can see how it gets really crisp. Play with the noise. And the vignette is if you wanted like a dark, you notice how the corners are getting darker. If you take it away, the corners can get lighter. So sometimes it helps people focus into the center of your image if you lighten or darken the edges to kind of bring our attention to the middle. So those are some things that you can do just in photos. On the left side, there's a crop button. So if you wanted to change the focus of your image, you can crop or pinch out. You can play, there's different color modes here. So if you want something kind of automatic, you can play with the filters. And then up here, those are your adjustments, which I showed you before. So that's how you would edit in photos. If you want to take it a step further, I'm going to go to Done here, and I'm going to click my Home button, and I'm going to go to the app Snapseed. If you don't already have the app, you can go to self-service and download it. Notice when you open Snapseed, it'll say, would you like to access photos? You're going to click OK, and that's going to give the app permission to get your photos. You can click the plus button in the middle, or you can click Open on the top left, and then you'll say Open from Device. And then you click All Photos, and that's how you're going to get your image so that you can edit it. Click on this image, and you'll see that when you start, there's a bunch of kind of presets, and these basically are pulling from the tools in the middle and are kind of assembling them all together to get different looks. So if you click smooth, you'll notice it kind of smooths out a lot of the colors. And then another one that I like a lot is Accentuate. And you'll notice it makes the colors really bright. And a really cool thing you can do if you take your finger and kind of hold down on your image, it shows the original. And then when I move my finger, it shows me how that filter has changed my image. Another choice that you have that looks really good is Pop. If you don't want the colors super saturated and intense, like Accentuate, you can go to Pop. And you'll see it's a little bit dimmer and duller. So those are just some choices. I actually really like Accentuate. I like those really rich, intense colors. And I think if I'm trying to show an image about spring, I think seeing those flowers and the bright green of the grass and the leaves really brings out that idea. So I'm going to go ahead and click my check mark down below. You can play with all these other ones. There's some presets for black and white images. This one looks like really intense filter, how it gets kind of light on the bottom. It's just kind of up to you what you like. I'm going to go ahead and click the check mark. And now I can go to Tools. And this is where you can get a little bit more specific. So if I click to an image, and you go to adjust on the bottom. These are a lot of the same things that we talked about in photos. So the way that it works, let's say I want to change my saturation. I can pick that. If I slide my finger to the right on top of the image, you see the colors get really intense. If I slide my finger to the left, we start to go towards black and white. The colors get really desaturated, right? So it's very similar to photos for tune image. Just dragging my fingers back and forth. If I like the way it looks, I can click the check mark. I can go back to tools, and this is where you're really just going to go play and experiment. There's really some different looks that you can experiment with. There's one that's called HDRscape. Here you see I'm on nature, so I can go to my adjustments. Here's the filter, and you can see kind of how it changes the look of the image. So if I like that, I can click the check mark. I can look at style, and there's just all these different options here. So you can see how it totally changes my image. If I like that, I can check mark. If I don't like it, I could just press the X. And again, you can always hold your finger down to see how your image would be different. I can go back to tools. Some of you might want to heighten the drama. You can see how that totally intensifies it. If I take that filter strength off, it changes it. And again, there's all different presets. So maybe I like it brighter or like really dark. Okay. And again, adjusting with my finger. If I don't like the way that looks, I can X. If I do, I press the check mark. There's a crop tool over here. There's a selective feature. So if I say I just want to focus on this flower, if I go to add on the bottom, the plus sign, and I click one time on that flower, B is for brightness. I'm going to slide my finger to the right, and I want you to notice the flower is getting really bright. Now you can see it's getting really dark. And you see that it's looking for that same yellow everywhere on my image, and all of the flowers are getting brighter or darker. So that's the way that you can kind of be selective. If I click above the letter B, I can actually change it. So maybe I don't want to mess with brightness. I want to mess with contrast, saturation, structure. So saturation, again, it's going to get the colors. If I drag to the right, it gets really intense. If I drag to the left, it gets kind of gray. So those are some things that you can do if you want to be selective about certain areas of your image. Let's say I like that. I can click the check mark. And again, you can just keep going back to your tools and really exploring and experimenting and seeing what you like. When you're all done, and actually before we're all done, I'll just show you one more cool thing. If you go up to the top right, you see it looks like two pieces of paper with a back arrow. If you click on that, I could do undo or redo. So that'll just take me back a couple steps if I want. I can actually click on that again, and I can go to View Edits. And now I'm going to get a list of all the things I did. And you'll notice in the beginning I used a filter. The filter was actually composed of portrait, HDR, tune, and details and curves. So these are all the things that were done by the filter. If I want to like go back through and say, what would it look like if we didn't do that? You can kind of see how each edit has changes things. And if you said, well, I don't actually like that HDR part of it, how can I get rid of that? If I hold that down, I could trash just that step. And you could see how it kind of changed, right? And if I want it back, I could always just go back to the top. I could say discard changes if I want. So it goes back. And then if I just pinch my fingers back, you see I can go either to those three dots up here, or if I'm done in this window, there's an arrow on the top left. So again, it's kind of hard to see it with my picture, but just showing you when I pinch my finger, if I go back to that arrow, it takes me back out of that edit mode. Okay, so again, if you wanted to go through and view your edits and make changes, you could. I can also click the revert button, and the revert button will take me all the way back to my beginning image. So if you're messing around a lot with your image and you don't really like the way that you edited and you want to start again, you click revert, and it'll just go all the way back. Okay, but let's say I hold my finger down. I really like the way that it's brought out that saturation and intensity. So I'm going to go ahead and keep these edits. I'm going to go to the bottom right and click export. And I want to actually click save a copy. You can also click the export button. You don't want to click just regular save, because what it'll do is it will go over top of your original, And for the purpose of this assignment, we're actually going to just make the edits, but I want you to save the originals too, because what we're going to do, the next part of this is that we're going to make a portfolio where we put the two images side by side so we can see your original image and then how you've changed it through edits. So what I'm going to have you do is just click Save a Copy, and you see it's adding all of the adjustments. And then if I click my Home button and I go to Photos, you'll see, and here I'll go back there, I've got two versions, right? I've got my original here, and then when I swipe, I've got my edited version. So you're gonna go ahead and edit 6 photos. You took 6 photos from last week. And again, you can, it's up to you. If you have like one style that you really love and you wanna just do the same thing, there's actually a cool feature I'll show you. If I go back to Snapseed and I say open, I'm gonna go ahead and open from device. And I'm going to open a different photo. So let's say I pick this one. Now this is a really different kind of image, but what's really cool is if I'm in here in looks, there's one button that says last edits. So if I click on last edits, it's going to do all the same things that I did on my other image. So I think I told you I like how the colors come up really intensely. If I hold my finger down and see, you can see how it was really kind of light. The sun was really bright. The colors were kind of faded. But if I do the same edits as last time, the colors get a lot more saturated and intense. There's a lot more contrast. So that's kind of the edit that I prefer. So it saves you a lot of work if you say, well, I just really like that style for all my photos. You could click last edits, check mark, and then it's going to edit them the same each time. But again, if you want to, play and experiment just to get to know the tools, I suggest that. And again, we can export, save a copy. So you've got 2 versions. All right, enjoy.